I found out my husband was sleeping with my sister in my mother's kitchen while my 4-year-old son was asleep on my shoulder. That sounds like a sentence someone writes after 3 glasses of wine and a nervous breakdown. I wish. It was a Sunday afternoon in Columbus. Gray outside, the kind of Ohio gray that makes even the trees look like they're waiting for bad news. Owen had left his dinosaur jacket at my mother's house the night before. And because he was 4, the jacket was not clothing, it was emotional infrastructure. He refused to nap without it, refused to eat without it, and at one point informed me that the dinosaur jacket had feelings. So I drove over. Just a quick stop. That's how disasters like to introduce themselves. Owen fell asleep in the car 5 minutes before we got there, mouth open, one cheek sticky with cookie crumbs, his little blue toy truck trapped in his fist. I carried him inside with that careful mom walk you do when one wrong step can turn a sleeping child into a legal hearing. My mother's front door was unlocked. It always was. Linda Carter believed locking doors before sunset was dramatic. She also believed Cool Whip was a food group and that family problems could be fixed by setting the table nicer. I stepped into the hallway. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. Then I heard Megan crying in the kitchen. My sister cried often enough that, at first, I didn't panic. Megan cried at commercials, parking tickets, and once because a barista spelled her name with an H. She was 29, beautiful, fragile in the way that made people move furniture around her feelings. Then my mother spoke. "You have to end this with Daniel before Rachel finds out." My whole body stopped. Not my feet, not my breath, my body. Owen was heavy on my shoulder, warm and soft, breathing into my neck. I stared at the wallpaper in my mother's hallway, the tiny blue flowers I had hated since high school, and I remember thinking very clearly, that wallpaper has witnessed too much. Megan sobbed. "I love him." No, absolutely not. There are sentences your brain refuses to accept at first. It just stands there holding the sentence like a package delivered to the wrong address. My mother said, "You don't get to love your sister's husband." A small sound came out of me. Not loud. Not enough for them to hear. Megan said, "You don't understand. Rachel has everything. She always has." That was almost funny. I had a mortgage, a child who once put raisins in my shoe, and a husband who apparently treated marriage like a family group chat with no boundaries. If that was everything, I wanted a refund. Then my mother's voice broke. "I saw you two in the laundry room 2 months ago. I told you to stop. I told you this would destroy her." 2 months. My mother had known for 2 months. I looked down at Owen's sleeping face. He had cookie dust in his eyelashes. His dinosaur jacket was hanging on the coat rack 10 feet away, bright green, innocent, stupidly cheerful. I wanted to walk into that kitchen and scream until every plate in the cabinet cracked, but Owen shifted in my arms. "Mama," he mumbled, still asleep. So I didn't scream. That may have been the first adult decision I made that day. Not the bravest. Just the one that kept my son asleep for 3 more minutes. Megan whispered, "What if Daniel leaves her?" My mother said nothing. That silence was worse than any answer. I stepped backward, 1 foot, then another. The floor creaked once and I froze, because apparently betrayal comes with sound design. Nobody came out. I grabbed the dinosaur jacket with 2 fingers, like it might also be lying to me, and walked back to the car. My hands shook so badly I couldn't buckle Owen's car seat the first time. "Come on," I whispered to the strap. "Do not become the final villain." I got it on the second try. Halfway home, Daniel texted me. "Dinner with your mom go okay?" I stared at the words at a red light. Behind me, Owen slept with his dinosaur jacket pressed under his chin. Ahead of me, my husband was waiting in our kitchen, probably making pasta, probably smiling, probably still believing I was the only person in my family who didn't know the joke. I drove home. And when Daniel kissed my cheek like a normal husband, I had to swallow hard, not to throw up on his shirt. My mother said later in a voicemail, "I thought if I kept quiet, I could save everyone." She was wrong. Silence didn't save my family, it just taught everyone where to hide the knife. Before that Sunday, before the dinosaur jacket became the stupid little landmark between my old life and my new one, I thought Daniel and I were fine. Not movie fine. Not kissing in the rain fine. Real fine. Bills paid mostly on time. Owen's toys everywhere. Daniel snoring through half of whatever show he insisted we start together. me pretending not to notice when he loaded the dishwasher like a raccoon with opposable thumbs. Marriage. Daniel Bennett was good at looking like a good man. That was his real talent. He had warm brown eyes, neat hair, and the kind of voice that made strangers at restaurants ask if he was in medicine. He sold medical equipment, which was close enough to give him a glow he had not earned. He was polite to my mother. Too polite, maybe. He called her Mom after our first year of marriage, and everyone acted like that was sweet. I thought it was sweet too. That's embarrassing now. Megan had always been around. She was my younger sister, after all. She came over for dinner, helped with Owen, drank my wine, borrowed my sweaters, cried on my couch when dates went badly. I used to think her presence made our house feel like family. Now I know family can sit at your island, eat your lasagna, and ask for more parmesan while ruining your life. The first signs were small. Daniel and Megan had private jokes. Nothing obvious. Nothing you could take to a jury without sounding unhinged. They would laugh in the kitchen, and when I walked in, the laugh would die just a little too fast. Megan knew Daniel hated onions in salad. Daniel knew Megan took oat milk and coffee but hated the dusty kind. Once I saw him scrape the onions off her plate before she even asked. I noticed. Then I immediately hated myself for noticing. Because who suspects her husband of wanting her sister? That's not a red flag. That's the whole circus tent catching fire while the clown asks if anyone smells smoke. One night, I woke up around 1:40 a.m. because Owen had crawled into our bed and placed one foot directly into my rib cage. Daniel wasn't beside me. I found him outside on the back porch, phone to his ear, voice low. "She can't know," he said. "Not yet." I stood behind the curtain, barefoot, holding a stuffed dinosaur, because apparently that was the uniform for my humiliation. When he came back in, I asked who he was talking to. "Work," he said. "At 1:40 in the morning? West Coast client." Daniel did have clients in California. That was the problem with good lies. They wear reasonable shoes. I asked if everything was okay. He kissed my forehead. "You worry too much." I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling fan until 3. In the morning, Megan texted me. "Can I come by later? I miss Owen." I remember reading that while pouring cereal into Owen's bowl and missing entirely. Cheerios scattered across the counter, the floor, one went into the silverware drawer. Owen clapped like I'd performed a trick. I laughed, a real laugh. That memory bothers me now. That I laughed on the same morning my life was tapping me on the shoulder, politely trying to get my attention. Megan came over that afternoon with cupcakes. She hugged Owen first, then Daniel, then me. Her perfume stayed on my shirt after she left. I threw it in the laundry without knowing why. Later my mother called and asked if Megan had been by. "Yes," I said. "Why?" There was a pause. "Too long." "No reason," she said. "Just checking." Back then, I thought my mother was being nosy. She was. Just not in the direction I understood. My mother had a gift for making panic look like housekeeping. Some women scream. Some women drink. Linda Carter washed dishes hard enough to file charges against porcelain. I should have noticed that sooner. There was a Saturday, maybe 3 months before I heard the truth in her kitchen, when I stopped by her house without calling first. Owen had a birthday party nearby, and I wanted to borrow her big folding table, because apparently children's parties require enough furniture to host a summit. Daniel told me he was meeting a client across town. Megan had told me she had a migraine and was staying home. So when I walked into my mother's house and saw Daniel's jacket on the back of a chair, my brain did a small, confused little tap dance. "Mom?" I called. Linda came out of the kitchen too fast, drying her hands on a towel that was already dry. "Rachel, honey, I didn't know you were coming." That was odd. My mother loved unannounced visits. She treated them like proof her children still needed her. "Is Daniel here?" She looked at the jacket, then at me, then at the floor. "Yes, he stopped by to fix the faucet." "The faucet?" "In the laundry room." I stared at her. My mother turned back toward the sink and started rinsing a mug like the mug had committed fraud. A minute later, Megan appeared from the hallway. Her hair was loose, a little messy. Her cheeks were pink. She wore one of those oversized sweaters that make fragile women look like injured deer in catalogs. "Oh," she said. "Rach, hi. You're here too?" She touched her forehead. "Migraine. Mom had the good medicine." I remember walking toward her and asking, "Do you need anything? Water? Crackers?" Yes, I offered crackers to the woman sleeping with my husband in my mother's house. I have replayed that moment so many times my brain should charge rent. Daniel came out of the laundry room carrying a wrench. He smiled. A normal smile. That still makes me angry. The normalness of it. Evil should sweat more. Betrayal should have visible stains. Instead, he stood there in my mother's hallway, holding a wrench like a helpful son-in-law, while my sister avoided my eyes and my mother tried to drown a coffee cup. "Hey babe," Daniel said. "Faucet's handled." "Great," I said. And I believed him. Mostly. On the drive home, Owen sang a song about a pizza dinosaur for 20 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel and told myself I was being weird. That became my hobby, explaining away my own instincts. The next week, I found Megan's hair clip in Daniel's car. A small tortoiseshell clip, hers. I knew because I bought it for her in a boutique downtown after she cried about turning 29. I used to have a professional degree in comforting Megan. I held it up when Daniel came into the garage. He didn't even blink. "Oh, Megan dropped that when I drove her to get your mom's birthday gift." "You drove her?" "She needed help carrying it." "It was a scarf." He smiled. "A heavy scarf?" I didn't smile back. His face shifted, softened. "Rachel, don't do that." "Do what?" "Make something ugly out of nothing." That sentence worked. I put the clip on the counter and walked away, not because I was convinced, because I was tired. Because Owen needed dinner. Because suspicion is exhausting when nobody else admits there is smoke. Later that month, Linda came over for Sunday dinner. Daniel and Megan were both there. Owen spilled apple juice on the rug. Everyone jumped up at once with napkins. For 1 second, we looked like a family. A functional little chaos machine. Then I saw my mother watching Daniel and Megan from across the room. Her face was not surprised, it was afraid. When she noticed me looking, she picked up Owen and hugged him too tight. "Grandma," he complained, "my bones." She laughed too loudly and let him go. I should have asked her then. I didn't. I let the moment pass because I wanted my life to remain recognizable. That's the thing about truth. Sometimes you don't miss it because it's hidden. Sometimes you step around it because you know exactly where it is. The night I came home from my mother's house, Daniel made pasta. Of course he did. Men in crisis love carbohydrates. They don't know they are in crisis yet, but their instincts do. He stood at the stove in a gray t-shirt, stirring sauce like a man in a commercial for dependable husbands. Owen sat at the kitchen table arranging carrot sticks into what he called a parking lot for cheese. The house smelled like garlic, tomato, and the end of my marriage. "Hey," Daniel said, turning. "You found the jacket?" I held up the dinosaur hoodie. Owen cheered like I had returned from war. Daniel kissed my cheek. I didn't move. He didn't notice, or maybe he did and chose not to. Daniel was excellent at stepping around unpleasant things unless they had attractive hair and my last name. "You okay?" he asked. "Headache." That was the first lie I told after learning the truth. It came out easily. That scared me. We ate dinner. Owen told Daniel about a worm he had seen near Grandma's driveway. Daniel acted fascinated. I watched him nod, smile, cut Owen's pasta into smaller pieces, wiped sauce from our son's chin. A good father. A lying husband. A man could be both, apparently. Very efficient of him. My phone buzzed. "Megan, did you get Owen's jacket?" I looked at the message until the letters blurred. I imagined texting back, "Yes, also picked up your dignity by mistake." Should I return it? Instead, I turned the phone face down. Daniel noticed. "Everything okay with your mom?" I almost laughed. "My mom?" I said. "Yeah, dinner go fine." I took a sip of water. Too much. I choked a little, which felt emotionally appropriate. "It was quick," he nodded. No guilt on his face. That was when I decided not to confront him. Not yet. I knew my family. If I exploded, Megan would cry. Daniel would lower his voice and call me irrational. My mother would put a hand on her chest and say, "Please, not in front of Owen," as if the problem was volume and not betrayal. I needed paper, proof, control. After Owen went to bed, I folded laundry while Daniel watched TV. I folded one of his shirts and considered setting it on fire. Not practical. Also, our smoke detector was sensitive, and I was tired. When he went upstairs to shower, I moved. Birth certificate. Owen's social security card. Insurance cards, his vaccine records, my laptop. A little cash from the emergency envelope inside the flour tin because yes, I hid money in flour. My grandmother did that. She also believed every man should be loved with one eye open. I used to think she was dramatic. Turns out Grandma had range. I checked the family iPad. Daniel had not logged out of his messages. Amateur or arrogant. There were texts with Megan. Not explicit. Worse, in some ways. Soft, familiar, domestic. Can you talk? I miss you. Last night was hard. Rachel seemed tired today. That one made my hand go cold. They had discussed me like weather. I took photos of everything with my phone. My hands were shaking so badly half the pictures were blurry. I retook them. Focus, Rachel. Betrayal does not get to ruin your evidence quality. Then I called Grace. She answered on the third ring. If this is about Daniel being useless with birthday planning again, I charge overtime. I need somewhere to disappear for a while. Silence. 3 seconds. Then Grace said, is this crime disappear or divorce disappear? Hopefully paperwork. Bring the kid, she said. I'll make the couch look less emotionally bankrupt. I wrote my mother a letter first. Not long, not cruel. Cruel would have taken too much time. Mom, I heard you. I heard enough. You don't have to explain right now. I'm taking Owen somewhere safe. You chose silence. I'm choosing my son. I stared at the paper, then added, please don't call Daniel before I'm gone. At 12:18 a.m. I placed Owen in his car seat while he slept. He opened one eye. Adventure? He mumbled. Yeah, baby, I whispered. Adventure. Before I left, I put my wedding ring on the kitchen table beside a note for Daniel. Don't look for us until you're ready to tell the truth. Then I walked out of the house with my son, 2 bags, and a heart so loud I was sure it would wake the neighbors. Driving away from your life is not cinematic. Nobody tells you that. There was no dramatic music, no perfect sunrise, no heroic hair blowing in the wind. There was just me in sweatpants, gripping the steering wheel at 12:40 in the morning, trying to merge onto I-70 while Owen snored in the back seat, and a bag of emergency goldfish crackers rattled every time I changed lanes. I cried once near Springfield. Not beautifully. I made a sound like a goat with legal problems, then wiped my face with a napkin from a gas station where I also bought coffee that tasted like hot regret. Owen woke up just before dawn. Mama? Yeah, baby. Where's Daddy? There it was, the little knife children carry without knowing it. He's at home. Are we going to Grandma's? No. Are we going to the zoo? I almost laughed. Not today. He sat quietly for a second, then asked the most important question in his world. Do we have snacks? Yes. Okay. That was all. At 4 years old, a family collapse can be temporarily managed with crackers shaped like fish. Honestly, adults could learn from that. Maybe courtrooms should have snack bowls. Might improve custody hearings. We reached Pittsburgh just after 7. Grace opened the door wearing plaid pajama pants, no bra, and holding a baseball bat. She looked at me, looked at Owen, looked at the 2 bags, then lowered the bat. Good, she said. You brought the cute one. What are we doing with the husband? I laughed. Then I cried so hard, Grace took Owen gently from my arms and said, okay, buddy, Aunt Grace has waffles and 0 emotional stability, but we're gonna make it work. Her apartment was small, loud from the street below, and smelled like coffee and old books. She had thrown a blanket over the couch and placed a pillow there, like she had personally negotiated with despair. Owen ate waffles at her kitchen table, legs swinging, while I sat on the floor beside the dishwasher, because my knees had apparently resigned. My phone would not stop buzzing. Daniel, Megan, Mom. Daniel again. I turned it face down. Grace handed me coffee. Drink, then talk, then we ruin his week legally. I don't know what I'm doing. Good, that means you won't do the stupid confident thing. Daniel left 6 voicemails before 9. The first was panic. Rachel, where are you? Owen's room is empty. Call me now. The second was anger. You can't just take my son. The third was performance. I'm worried about you. You're not acting like yourself. That one made Grace snort. Amazing. Man cheats with your sister and diagnoses you with not being cheerful, Megan texted. Please let me explain. I read it 3 times. Explain what? The scheduling? The laundry room? The part where she watched me sit across from her at Thanksgiving and asked me to pass the rolls with the same mouth she used to kiss my husband? I typed nothing. My mother called 11 times. I didn't answer, not until the evening. Her voicemail was only 12 seconds long. Rachel, she cried. I was trying to keep the family together. I stood in Grace's hallway holding the phone. Owen was in the living room, making a tower out of couch cushions. Grace was pretending not to watch me too closely. I replayed the voicemail. Then I deleted it. "No, Mom," I whispered. "You kept the table set while the house burned." The next day, Grace drove me to meet a family lawyer named Meredith Shaw, who had sharp glasses and a calm voice that made me want to confess things I hadn't done. Meredith listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You were right not to confront him alone." Those words almost broke me, because some part of me had been waiting for someone to say I had not lost my mind. We filed for temporary custody. We documented the affair. We documented the emotional instability in the family environment. We documented everything I had collected, including Daniel's messages with Megan and my mother's letter, which I had photographed before leaving it. That night, Owen fell asleep on Grace's couch, dinosaur jacket zipped up to his chin. I sat beside him. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. Then Megan. Then a number I didn't recognize. A message appeared. "This is Aunt Carol. Your mother is not doing well." I stared at it. The room tilted a little. Grace saw my face and sat next to me. "What now?" I swallowed. "My mother." And for the first time since leaving Columbus, I felt the anger crack just enough for fear to get in. The thing about family disasters is that they don't explode once. They keep popping, like cheap fireworks. You think the worst one already went off, then suddenly your phone lights up with another emotional grenade from a relative who starts the message with, "I don't want to get involved, but..." Aunt Carol got involved immediately. She called me at 8:12 the next morning, whispering as if my mother's hospital room had spies in the lamps. "Your mother's blood pressure went through the roof," she said. "They're keeping her overnight. Maybe longer. She's asking for you." I sat on Grace's bathroom floor because Owen was watching cartoons in the living room, and I refused to discuss generational betrayal near animated puppies. "Is she okay?" Carol sighed. "Physically, they're checking her heart. Emotionally, no, but none of us are exactly winning trophies." That was fair. Daniel called an hour later. Against Grace's advice, Meredith's advice, and the advice of every woman in history who ever survived a man saying, "Just let me explain," I answered. His voice broke when he said my name. "Rachel." I hated that my body reacted. 14 years of knowing him. 9 years together. 6 years married. Your nervous system doesn't check morality before responding to a familiar voice. "Say the truth," I said. Silence. Then, "It happened." I closed my eyes. "Say who?" "Rachel. Say her name." His breath shook. "Megan." There it was, spoken out loud. Still ugly, still impossible, still mine to survive. "How long?" It wasn't like that. I laughed, actually laughed, loud enough that Grace knocked on the bathroom door. "Wrong answer," I said. Daniel started crying. "It was a mistake." Repeatedly? He didn't answer. "That's not a mistake, Daniel. That's a subscription." He said he was confused, lonely, pressured. Megan understood him. I was always tired. I was always focused on Owen. He said it like my motherhood had become an inconvenience to his emotional hobbies. Then Megan called. I didn't answer. She sent a long text instead. "I love him. I didn't mean for it to happen. You always had everything so easily." I know that sounds terrible. I stared at the message. Grace read it over my shoulder and made a face. Well, at least she brought her own shovel and kept digging. That afternoon, I put Owen down for a nap and walked into the kitchen to get milk. I opened the cabinet, placed the milk beside the cereal, then opened the refrigerator and stared at an empty shelf. It took me 10 seconds to realize what I'd done. I laughed, then cried, then moved the milk, then put the cereal in the fridge. Grace gently took both from me. "Okay, the groceries are not the enemy." They might be. Everyone else was. She hugged me and I let her. That was new. I had spent so many years being the oldest daughter, the steady one, the reliable one, the person who remembered birthdays and printed insurance cards and knew which cousin had a peanut allergy. Now I couldn't organize breakfast without committing dairy crimes. Owen started preschool in Pittsburgh that week on a temporary basis. The teacher asked him to draw his family. He drew 2 people, me and him. We were both purple. I stared at the picture in the hallway and had to go into the bathroom, turn on the faucet, and cry with one hand pressed over my mouth. Kids don't always ask. Sometimes they just know where the empty chair is. That night, Aunt Carol called again. "Your mother wrote you a letter," she said. "She wants you to read it." "I don't want a letter." "I know." "Then why are you calling?" "Because she may not get the chance to say it right." I sat down. The room went quiet around me. Carol's voice softened. Rachel, she's worse today. I looked toward the living room where Owen was lining up toy cars on the rug. One red, one blue, one yellow, one green. A little world he could control. Send a letter, I said. And when it arrived in my email 20 minutes later, I stared at the attachment like it might bite. Maybe it should have. My mother's letter began with my name. Rachel, just that. No dear. No my sweet girl. No soft landing. Good. I didn't want soft. I sat at Grace's kitchen table after Owen fell asleep, wearing the same sweatshirt for the third day in a row. Grace put tea beside me and did not tell me I looked tired because she was a good friend and also had eyes. I opened the letter. Rachel, I saw them in my laundry room. I stopped reading, not because I was surprised, because seeing the words made the images too real. Laundry room. My mother's laundry room, with the humming dryer, the shelf of detergent, the basket of unmatched socks, the stupid ceramic sign that said, "Family is everything." I almost laughed at that. Almost. Grace sat across from me. Want me to read it first? No. I kept going. I saw them in my laundry room 2 months before you heard us in the kitchen. I wish I could tell you I misunderstood. I did not. Megan was crying. Daniel was begging me not to tell you. He said it was over. She said it wasn't. I told them both they had one chance to stop before they destroyed you. I thought if I stopped it quietly, you would never have to hurt. I pressed my hand over my mouth. That sentence. That stupid sentence. Because mothers do this sometimes. They rename control as protection. They call fear love. They wrap silence in a clean napkin and serve it like mercy. I read on. Every Sunday after that, when you came for dinner, I wanted to tell you. I watched you pour Daniel coffee. I watched Megan hold Owen. I watched you laughing at the table, and I told myself that if I spoke, I would be the one to break it. I was wrong. It was already broken. I just made you sit inside the broken thing longer. My eyes blurred. I wiped them with my sleeve because tissues were too far away and dignity had left some time around the cereal and fridge incident. The next line was worse. I thought silence was mercy. It was cowardice. Finally, no excuses. No, I did it for the family. No, you have to understand, just the word. Cowardice. I hated that it helped. I hated that part of me softened when she stopped lying. Grace watched my face. Bad? Honest. That's rude of her. I choked out a laugh. Then I cried. Not the big dramatic kind, just leaking, like my face had quietly given up on boundaries. My mother wrote about Owen. She said every time she hugged him after finding out, she felt like she was apologizing into his hair. She said he smelled like apple shampoo and crayons, and she kept thinking he deserved a family that did not make him carry adult shame. She wrote about Megan. I made her weak by protecting her from consequences. I called it tenderness. Maybe I was just afraid she would hate me. She wrote about me. You were always the strong one, and I used that as permission to hurt you less carefully. I put the paper down. That one opened something, old, deep, ugly. The oldest daughter wound, the one nobody names at dinner because the strong one is busy clearing plates. Grace reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I don't want to go back, I whispered. You don't have to. She's sick? She is. I hate her. Also aloud, I love her. Annoying but aloud. I laughed again, and this time it hurt less. The phone rang at 11:26 p.m. Aunt Carol. I knew before I answered. Grace stood up. I put the phone to my ear. Carol's voice was thin. Rachel, she's asking for you. The doctor says, if you're coming, come soon. I closed my eyes. In the bedroom, Owen coughed in his sleep. Small, human, mine. I looked at my mother's letter on the table. Then at Grace. I need to pack. Grace nodded. Good, your family should not be left alone with truth. They've already proven they store it badly. I smiled. A terrible, tired smile. Then I folded my mother's letter and placed it in my bag. Not because I forgave her, because I was going back with evidence of what she had finally admitted, and because some goodbyes, even ugly ones, still belong to you. We drove back to Columbus before sunrise. Grace drove because I had cried too much to be trusted with highway lanes, and because she said, I refuse to die because your family has unresolved communication issues. Fair. Owen sat in the back with his dinosaur jacket, a blanket, and a plastic container of snacks. He was very serious about the snacks. He had packed goldfish, animal crackers, and one loose grape he found in Grace's fridge and insisted was for Grandma. I told him Grandma was sick. He asked if she had a fever. I said kind of. He asked if we should bring her soup. I said maybe. Then he asked if people feel better when they get snacks. I started crying again. Grace handed me a napkin without looking away from the road. Hydrate. You're leaking like a haunted faucet. By the time we reached the hospital, my stomach was twisted so tight I could barely breathe. Daniel was in the hallway outside my mother's room. Of course he was. He looked thinner, unshaven, eyes red. His shirt was wrinkled. I hated that some part of me noticed he was suffering and felt a flicker of pity. The body is a traitor. Mine apparently liked reruns. He stood when he saw us. Rachel. Owen hid behind my leg. That did something to Daniel's face. Good. Can I talk to him? Daniel asked. No, his eyes filled. He's my son, and I'm his mother. Today we are not doing hallway custody theater. Grace made a quiet sound behind me that might have been approval. Daniel lowered his voice. I know I hurt you. No, I said. You betrayed me. Hurt is when you forget milk. Betrayal is when you sleep with my sister and let me serve her mashed potatoes. His mouth opened. Closed. Progress. Silence suited him better. Megan appeared near the vending machines. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was tied back messily, no makeup, face pale and swollen. She looked younger, not innocent, just smaller. She saw Owen and started crying. Absolutely not. She walked toward me with both hands raised slightly, as if approaching a stray animal. Rachel. No. She stopped. I just want to say, no, please, I never meant to hurt you. I stared at her. That sentence, the official anthem of people who hurt you repeatedly but wanted better lighting while doing it. That's strange, I said, because you were very consistent. Megan flinched. Grace whispered, clean hit. Megan looked at Owen. Can I hug him? I actually laughed. No, you don't get comfort from the child whose home you helped break. Her face crumpled. For one tiny second, I saw my baby sister. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The girl I taught to braid hair. The girl who cried when I left for college. Then I saw Daniel's messages, the laundry room, my mother's silence, and the door inside me closed again. Aunt Carol came out of the room. Her eyes moved over all of us and settled on me. She wants you first, she said. Alone. Owen tugged my sleeve. Is Grandma Scary sick? I knelt in front of him. She's very sick. Should I give her the grape? I pressed my lips together. Grace turned away, pretending to inspect the vending machine like it held spiritual answers. Yes, I said, but maybe later. Owen nodded solemnly, guarding the grape like medicine. I stood. Daniel said, Rachel, please? After you see her, can we talk? I looked at him. Really looked. This man I had loved. This man I had built grocery lists and bedtime routines and a whole false sense of safety with. No, I said. Not today. Then I walked into my mother's room. Linda Carter looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Hospitals do that. They shrink people. Strip away kitchens, opinions, lipstick control. Leave only the body and whatever truth it can still carry. Her hair was thin against the pillow. Her lips were dry. Tubes ran from her arm. The monitor beeped steadily beside her, far too calm for the situation. She opened her eyes, saw me, and broke. Rachel, she whispered. I stood by the door for a moment, thief unable to move. Then I walked to her bed. Not quickly, not warmly, but I walked. Her hand reached for mine. I looked at it, then took it. And my mother started to cry like someone who had finally run out of places to hide. My mother's hand felt too light. That was the first thing I noticed. Linda Carter had always had capable hands. Hands that kneaded dough, slapped dust off curtains, fixed crooked collars, carried casseroles into rooms where nobody asked how tired she was. Now her fingers rested in mine like folded paper. I'm sorry, she said. I wanted to say, for what? Not because I didn't know. Because I wanted to hear her name it. Maybe that was cruel. Maybe I had earned a little cruel. For what? I asked. Her eyes closed. A tear slid into her hairline. For seeing it and hiding it, she whispered. For letting you sit at my table with them. For letting Megan hold Owen. For letting Daniel walk into your house after I knew what he was. For telling myself I was protecting you when I was protecting myself. The monitor beeped. My throat burned. She kept going. I was afraid. I laughed once, not kindly. Everybody was afraid. Somehow I'm the only one who wasn't allowed information. She flinched. Good. Then I hated myself for thinking good. This is what betrayal does. It makes you ugly in corners you thought were clean. I thought if I told you, I would be the one destroying the family, she said. I leaned closer. You didn't protect the family. You protected the picture of it. Her face crumpled. There it was. The sentence had lived in me since Pittsburgh. Maybe longer. It came out calm. Too calm. Like a blade set carefully on a table. Linda nodded. I know. I wasn't ready for that. I had expected defense. Tears, yes. Excuses, definitely. Something about Megan being fragile. Something about Owen needing a father. Something old and maternal and wrong. But she just said, I know, and it knocked the anger sideways. Not away. Never away. Just sideways enough for grief to step in. I was your daughter, I said. You are. No, I was your daughter in that moment. Before I was a wife. Before I was Owen's mother. I was your daughter. And you let me walk around blind. Linda covered her mouth with her free hand. I know, she said again. I don't need you to forgive me today. I just needed to stop lying before I die. I looked toward the window. Outside, Columbus looked flat and gray. Cars moved in the parking lot like nothing important had happened. People say the world stops when your life breaks. It doesn't. It keeps being rude and functional. I sat down in the chair beside her bed. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, Is Owen here? Yes, can I see him? I closed my eyes. There were 100 reasons to say no. Good reasons, sharp reasons, reasons with receipts. But Owen loved his grandmother, and Linda was dying. Maybe not that hour, maybe not that day, but soon enough for the room to know. I'll bring him in, I said. But you don't say anything confusing. You don't ask him to fix this. You don't make him carry adult sadness. I won't. I went to the hallway. Everyone looked at me. Daniel stood first. Megan hugged herself. Grace watched my face like she was ready to either drive us home or commit a felony with office supplies. Owen, I said gently. Grandma wants to see you. He looked at the container in his hand. Can I bring the grape? Yes. He walked into the room with the solemn bravery only small children have, the kind that comes from not understanding how big the moment is. Hi, Grandma, he said. Linda sobbed. He placed the grape on her blanket. For you. She put one trembling hand over it like he had given her a diamond. Thank you, sweetheart. Mom says you're very sick. I am. Do you need a Band-Aid? Linda cried harder. I looked away, not because I was cold, because if I watched too closely, I might forgive too fast, just to stop the pain. Owen climbed carefully onto the chair beside me and told Linda about his new preschool, the purple family drawing, and how Grace burned toast but called it crunchy. Linda listened like every word was a prayer. When we left the room, the doctor met me in the hallway. She's stable for now, he said. But you should understand, time may be limited. I nodded. Daniel stepped toward me. Megan did too. I held up one hand. No. They stopped. Grace took Owen's hand. I looked back at my mother's closed door. I had come back. That was all I could give that day. And somehow, it was both not enough and everything. My mother lived 4 more months. That surprised everyone. Especially her. Linda Carter had always been stubborn, but apparently her heart wanted to finish a few conversations before leaving the building. I drove Owen to Columbus twice a month. Not every week. I couldn't do that. I had work, court appointments, Owen's preschool, and a nervous system that now treated family gatherings like weather alerts. But we went. The visits were strange, quiet, sometimes almost normal, which felt offensive. My mother and I talked in pieces, never long. Never clean. There were no sweeping speeches with soft music. Mostly she sat in her recliner with a blanket over her knees, and I sat on the couch holding coffee I forgot to drink. Once I made her tea and forgot the tea bag. Just handed her a mug of hot water. She looked into it and said, This feels fair. I laughed. Then she laughed. Then we both cried because apparently our emotional range had become badly wired. Daniel and I divorced. Not quickly, because divorce is paperwork's way of punishing you for believing in romance. But it happened. I got primary custody. Daniel got supervised visitation at first, then structured visits after therapy, parenting classes, and several court conversations where he looked like he was being digested by shame. I did not clap for his growth. Growth is nice. It does not unbreak the plate. Megan left Columbus before the divorce finalized. She moved to Nashville with a friend, according to Aunt Carol, who had become the family news service nobody subscribed to but everyone received. Megan wrote me one letter. I did not open it for 3 weeks. When I finally did, It was full of apologies and loneliness and explanations that still placed her pain in the center of the room like furniture I was expected to walk around. I put it back in the envelope. No reply. Sometimes silence is not cowardice. Sometimes it is a locked door. My mother died on a quiet Tuesday morning. Of course it was Tuesday. Tuesdays had been rude before. They were consistent. Aunt Carol called while I was packing Owen's lunch. I had peanut butter on my thumb and one sock on because motherhood does not pause for death notifications. "She's gone," Carol said. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Owen came in holding a spoon. "Mama?" I wiped my face. "Grandma died, baby." He frowned. Like the goldfish, I nodded because that was close enough for 4. He climbed into my lap, spoon and all, and patted my shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. I cried then. For my mother, for myself. For the years we lost before we knew we were losing them. At the funeral, Daniel stood in the back. Megan came too, wearing black and looking hollow. She did not approach me. That was the first respectful thing she had done in a long time. After the service, Aunt Carol handed me a small envelope. "Your mother wanted you to have this." I opened it later in Pittsburgh, after Owen fell asleep. "Rachel, don't let my silence become your inheritance." That was all. One sentence. Very Linda. In the end, late but finally brief. I kept the note in a wooden box with Owen's hospital bracelet from when he was born, my divorce papers, and one tiny purple family drawing from his first week in Pittsburgh. Months later, Owen asked why we didn't live in our old house anymore. We were sitting on the floor racing toy cars across the rug. I thought about lying. Then I thought about my mother. "Because some houses look safe," I said, "but they teach you to be small." He blinked. Didn't understand. Obviously. Then he handed me the red car. "You be this one. It's fastest." So I raced him. Badly. He cheated. I let him. Or maybe I didn't. I'm not great at toy car physics. The point is, we laughed. In our small Pittsburgh apartment with the noisy radiator and the crooked bookshelf, my son and I laughed without pretending. I didn't forgive everyone. I didn't forget anything. But I stopped letting their silence be the loudest thing in my life. A year later, a birthday card arrived for Owen. No return address. But I knew Megan's handwriting. I stood by the mailboxes in my apartment building, holding that envelope like it might explode, while Mrs. Alvarez from 2B asked if I was okay. I said yes, which was ambitious. Upstairs I opened a dinosaur card, $20 inside. No long letter. Just, "Happy birthday, Owen. I hope you're happy." Aunt Megan. I sat with it for a while. The old Rachel would have known what to do immediately. Send it back, throw it out, call Grace and deliver a courtroom-level speech in sweatpants. New Rachel had learned that not every feeling needed instant management. So I put the card in a drawer. Not Owen's drawer, mine. A place for unfinished things. Daniel still sees Owen on schedule. He tries. I let that be true without turning it into forgiveness. Some nights Owen asks questions that don't have clean answers. I answer what I can. I don't make him carry my bitterness. That is harder than leaving. Nobody tells you that. Sometimes I read my mother's last note. "Don't let my silence become your inheritance." I think she was asking me to break the family tradition of swallowing knives and calling it dinner. So I try. I talk. I answer. I leave rooms when rooms become too small for my truth. Some families don't break in one loud crash. Some break quietly, while everyone is still passing plates at dinner. Mine broke that way. Quietly, politely, with napkins folded. But my son and I did not stay under the ruins. We walked out. And this time nobody's silence came with us.